Welcome to the Indiana Farmers Market Community of Practice June webinar. My name is Christina Ferroli. I'm the coordinator for the Indiana Farmers Market Community of Practice. And today we have a little bit of a twist with webinars. We are giving away to the first 43 people who hop on the webinar a free hand washing station. The station will be mailed to you, so please drop your name and address in the chat, and it will be ordered and sent directly to your address. This it's been brought to you by the Indiana Department of Health Food Safety Division through a generous grant through them. We're able to do this giveaway. So we're very excited to be able to do this, and we look forward to more of these opportunities in the near future. So without further ado, let me give a quick intro to our presenters today. We have with us today Dr. Amanda Deering, Terry Geary, and Dorian Suso, and they are with the Safe Produce Indiana team, and I will turn it over to Amanda to get things started.
Great. Thank you, Christina. And thank you everyone for coming. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to get one of these hand wash stations. I mean, these are around $100 value. And so that we can do that through the generous grant from the Indiana Department of Health. I think it is an amazing opportunity. So I'm glad you guys are all able to take advantage of that today. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Can you guys see that? Okay. Terry, can you see that? Yeah.
We're
okay.
Good.
Wonderful. All right. So yes, I'm Amanda Deering. And I am one of the members of the Safe Produce Indiana team that's here in with Purdue Extension. I'm located on campus in the Department of Food Science, and we'll each introduce ourselves once we're kind of splitting this up. We can each introduce ourselves. But both Terry and I are located on campus, and then we have the third member of our team is Scott Monroe, and he's located down at our Purdue Extension Food Safety Training Hub in Vincennes. So between the three of us, we work the state. I've seen a lot of familiar names join. I think so. A lot of you guys, I think, know us or have worked with us in the past. So we look forward to being with you today, or we're here with you today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about worker health, hygiene, and some of the training that's really important to have for your workers. And I think part of it, we're going to talk a little bit more about these hand washing stations. And so Dorian is one of my grad students, and she's done some work trying to figure out what are the better options for these portable hand washing stations. And, that's one thing we always got was, oh, I can't, it's too hard to put in a hand washing station. And we're going to give you some good options. And again, you're going to get one today. And so there's nothing that says these have to be plumbed in, right? A portable hand washing station does the trick. And as long as you have soap, water, paper towel, or something to dry your hands, you're good to go. But we'll get into all that as we go along here. So why is worker health, hygiene, and training important? And I know I've seen some names in here that has had one of our trainings. We spend a whole module talking about this, but humans are dirty, right? They carry human pathogenic bacteria. And so if they're sick, they can spread these bacteria or viruses or protozoa, whatever they have that they're infected with, they can spread this around. Right. And so we really need to be able to understand what are those symptoms, what do they look like when they're experiencing a foodborne illness. And a lot of folks, right, if they don't come to work, they're not getting paid. And so they're going to come to work and they may try to hide their symptoms or that, because they want to get paid. They may not have vacation time, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. So they carry human pathogens. It could be something like they're sick with salmonella, shigella, it could be hepatitis, norovirus, things like that. And right, we use our hands a lot in the produce industry. So that's what we typically use to harvest. And so if we're not washing our hands properly, they can spread these pathogens through this fecal oral route, right? So somebody goes to the bathroom, they don't wash their hands, and then they touch some produce that they're harvesting, right? So we really need to focus on understanding that the training is important, so they understand that they need to wash their hands and when they need to do it, and then how to know that they're sick, right? And it's not that they can't come to work necessarily, we just don't want them handling produce, right? We don't want them to be the ones out in the field picking or packing, washing, anything like that. So could they do something else in the office or somewhere else on the farm? Sure, but we just don't want them harvesting produce. So routes of contamination, I mean, right, we could say pretty much anywhere, right? So obviously we know feces, it can be our clothing that becomes contaminated. For an example, we see this a lot, right? A lot of farms are diversified now. And so there's not just fruits and vegetables are growing, they're doing livestock, poultry, other things. And so you just need, and that's fine and that's great. But we just have to keep that in mind when we think about risk, right? So walking through where you're feeding the chickens and then not changing your boots and then going immediately into, your tomato patch, well, that could be a problem, right? You could be introducing salmonella or other bacteria. So again, hands, footwear, tools and equipment, if someone's ill or in an injury, right? So all of these things are ways that we can contaminate produce. And it's just something we have to keep in mind, right? We just have to be aware of. And that's why the more of these hand washing stations I think you can have around, the better, because the more likely they're going to wash their hands if it's easy. If it's hard and they have to walk a long way, and they're just not going to do it, right? So you just make it easy for them. So proper use of toilets, right, we should have all urination and defecation in the toilet and never in the field or the nearby production area. We have to have places for our employees to go to the bathroom. So going out next to the the hedgerow, yeah, not a good plan, right? So have toilets for them. And the toilet paper should go into the toilet, not in a garbage can or on the floor. And again, that's a cultural thing. In a lot of South America, Central American countries, their plumbing can't support toilet paper, a lot of toilet paper. And so that's their common practice, is to put the toilet paper in a waste paper basket next to the toilet. But we don't want to do that here, right? So they need to be trained that toilet paper goes in the toilet and not in a separate container or trash can. And your hands always should be washed after going to the toilet or even going in those facilities, right? Because all it takes is somebody not washing their hands on the way out, and that causes contamination. And poor hygiene, I think that can be a very difficult conversation to have, but it's important, right? And so we want to make sure that the hands are clean, the fingernails are clean. I mean, obviously they're going to get dirty, right? You're working in the dirt. There's not much you can do about that. But, right, there still should be some way, that at some point hands are getting washed. We make sure that the restrooms are clean, right? And that we're washing our hands the correct way, right? So all these things are very important. And restrooms, so right, we need to provide restrooms for the employees. And so per OSHA guidelines, we have to have at least one restroom for every 20 employees. And this is a functional restroom, right? That is stocked with toilet paper, that's flushable, and it's not, or it's a porta pot that's serviced on a regular basis. And it needs to be located no more than a quarter mile from the work site, or it can be a 10-minute drive. So having it close, right? If it's not close and it's not easy, they're not going to do it. The more likely somebody's going to go in the field, and that's definitely what we don't want to do, right? And these facilities need to be cleaned, and really the best practice is to have it documented. So if you have a porta pot and it's serviced, they do that documentation for you. And if you do it on your own, just having a little sheet on the back of the door, like you see at restaurants, something like that, that is the best practice. If you can document that has been cleaned and serviced. So hand sanitizers cannot replace hand washing, right? You cannot sanitize a dirty surface. That is just the facts of it, because what happens is if you have a sanitizer and there's a lot of organic matter, the killing capacity of that sanitizer to kill bacteria just tanks if there's tons of organic matter, right? So you have to wash your hands first and then apply the sanitizer. That's when it's going to reach your 99.9% effectiveness that it advertises on the label, on the bottle label, right? It doesn't get that. And trust me, it doesn't get 99.9 if your hands are filthy and you just use hand sanitizer. And we get the question, you know, what if you're foraging for mushrooms? There's no hand washing facilities. Yes. So if that's your only option, that's better than nothing. But just know it's not going to be that 99.9% effectiveness if your hands are dirty. It won't be. So here's some posters. So Terry will talk a bit on our website. She'll show you some of these, but these are some that we have on our website that you can download and print. I think they're good to have around, right? It's just reminders for the workers. Gives some ways to identify what are their symptoms. And I know we have a lot of U-pick farmers, or that U-pick is hard, right? You don't have a lot of control of what's happening out there. But here's just some signage you can put up that would kind of help employees. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Terry. Is that correct? Oh no, Dorian, sorry.
Dorian has the next section. Yep.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dorian Sosu. I'm one of Dr. Deering graduate students. So I just started this summer. I'm very excited to get to work, and I'll be working on the grants and on those hand wash sessions. So just to emphasize on what Dr. Deering said. So when we think about like when our hands needs to be washed, so very often straightforward, like of course after using the restroom. So that's the most important step, the most important step that we need to do, like after using the restroom, right? But this is not the only time we need to wash our hand. We of course we need to wash our hand before starting to work, because you know when we come to work we have all those pathogen or all those bacteria on our hands, on our clothes, and like she said, women carry pathogens. So we of course we need to wash our hand before starting to handle produce, and then putting our gloves on. So we think often that, okay, well, we're putting gloves so we don't need to, it's not going to matter, but it does. Because what happened if you have a cut on your gloves when you handle the produce? So if your hands have bacteria, you can get the produce contaminated. So those are the reason. And of course, again, when we're coming back from our break and when we are touching animals and animal waste, like human animals also carry pathogens. So that's why it's really important to wash our hands at those times. Next slide, please. So we often think that there's a misconception that hand wash need to be very costly or expensive, but it doesn't really need to be that expensive. So this is the one of the hand wash station that the University of Minnesota developed. So it takes 2 hours to build, and it was about $100, and it come with trash can, paper towel, waste bucket included in the cost. So you have a fresh water capacity of 7 gallon and also a 5-gallon waste bucket. So this is just an example. So for example, when I look on their website, they also say that you can, if you have a pickup truck, you can put the waste and the water container on the pickup bed, and then have the waste container at the bottom, and just wash your hands there, and have all the supply like the paper towel on the pickup bed. So those are ideas also that you can, so it doesn't need to be costly, it doesn't need to cost like $500 or $1,000, but you need to provide to the people who are working on the field. All right, next slide, please. So on the website, we can also share this with you later. There's the instruction how to build the the portable hand wash station. So there's like all the steps. There's also a video that tells you how you should put the lumber together, the screws and all of that. It's very simple and not really difficult. I haven't done that, but I think it will look very easy to do. It's like a puzzle, I guess. So, next slide, please. So this is another option that we also find. So this is from Amazon. So it's very it's made out of plastic, but it's not like compared to the lumber, but it will work for your farm. So it's a little bit above $100, but it took me about 25 minutes. So it comes with a manual, so you should just follow the instruction. But however, it doesn't come with a waste bucket. So this is also something that will be provided. But how this one works, it has a foot pump at the bottom. So you just press that and then the water comes up and then you just wash your hand. So I think that's also a good idea, not very expensive, that you can provide on the farm or at the farmer's market so people can wash their hands. Next slide. Okay. Again, this is pretty straightforward. When we think about proper hand washing, we think that we know how to wash our hand, but it's very not scary, but like to see how many people doesn't wash their hand like very effectively. So we think I just rinse our water. So one of the things I really was really interesting when I was taking this training with Dr. Daring, we did an activity with glow germ. I can put that in the chart so you can look also later. Is basically something that make your bacteria glow. So we put those on our hands, and some of ours wash our hand with water, warm water, and also I think with soap. So it was interesting to see, and then we put our hand under UV light. So it was interesting to see that even though we did that, we still have bacteria under our nails and all of those places. It's very important to wet our hands with water first, apply soap, and then rinse, and then dry with paper towel. And all of this needs to be done, like washing our hands, we need to be done in 20 seconds. People always recommend to sing like something, happy birthday or ABC twice in our mind. So that also helps to count the 20 seconds. Or if you want to just count, that's great too. So, and then when you're done, you throw the paper towel in the trash can. So, thanks. Okay. One of the other routes of contamination is closing. So like Dr. Daniel said, we carry pathogen everywhere on our clothes, on our hands. So it's very important that when we work with produce to have our clothes clean all the time. So we need to have like a designated area for all the equipment, our apron or gloves. If we are using like reusable gloves, they need to be washed frequently or need to be cleaned very frequently. Or if it's disposal gloves, they need to be disposed as soon as possible. They don't need to be very ugly or old before we throw them away. So yeah, next slide. Okay. So about worker illness. So when a worker comes on the site, if the person is really sick, so the symptoms are like nauseous, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and all of that, they can't handle produce. They can be in the office doing like paperwork, but they really can't, because this is really important, because most of the time produce, we don't consume them raw. We don't consume them like cook. Some people consume them raw. So it's really important to make sure, or to reduce the risk of contamination. So that's the reason why when a worker is on the side, they need to let their supervisor know that they are sick, or they have those symptoms, because they can carry some pathogen like norovirus, salmonella, and shigella species. So those are very bad pathogen for the produce. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, worker injury. So this, if, for example, let's say you're handling a produce and you get a cut when you're slicing the lettuce and you get a cut. First of all, you can think like maybe it's something that you can just ignore, but even your blood and your body fluids can carry pathogen, and it can contaminate the produce. So it's very important to provide first aid kits, and like first aid kits to the workers. And as soon as you get a cut, just go and look for the first, and they don't need to be very far. They need to be available at certain spot in the office, on the site, somewhere very accessible for the workers, so they can just get there, get what they need. And if it's not really bad at all, they can put gloves and get back to work. But if it's a very bad injury, make sure to call the 911. So, all right. I believe that's my last slide, and I can pass over to Terry, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dorian. I also just want to add, Dorian's done some awesome work looking at those hand wash stations that she showed. That second one that she showed, the portable one, I believe that will be the hand wash station that you all will receive for attending this webinar. So as Dorian pointed out, and I just want to reiterate, that hand wash station does not come with a receptacle to capture that wastewater. So that is something that you'll want to set up when you set up this hand wash station. You'll want to have an extra 5-gallon bucket or something on hand to just place underneath that tube that directs the wastewater after the hand washing. So just make sure you note that. Okay, so talking about worker training, Amanda and Dorian both talked about those specific practices that workers need to do in order to minimize the risk of foodborne illness and contamination that workers can cause. So we can't just assume that workers are going to follow all of these practices or know them. And we can't assume that it's common sense either, as much as we'd like to. So workers do need to receive basic sanitation and worker hygiene training at least annually. And it wouldn't hurt to offer a couple of training refreshers if you can throughout the season. And it also needs to be conducted upon hire as well. So before workers go out into the field and start handling produce, they need to go through some type of training. And we get questions from growers sometimes of, okay, who needs this training? And the short answer is everyone. Anyone that is handling produce on the farm needs that training, even if they are immediate family. If that is who your workers are on the farm, they need to go through some of that basic food safety training. Some farms we work with have volunteers come in a couple days a year or anything like that. Anyone that is handling that fresh produce needs to go through that training. It doesn't have to be burdensome, but it does need to be documented. And we'll talk about some of the different ways that you can approach this too. So what does worker training need to include? So it needs to include general information. So just help your workers understand why this is a concern, why they need to follow these good agricultural practices, these good hygiene practices on the farm. So we can transport pathogens on produce, and workers can be that vector for contamination. So they need to understand that. We want to cover basic hygiene and basic health policies. So basically, sick people should not be handling produce. We want to create a culture where they're comfortable reporting if they are experiencing symptoms of illness. We do have that poster available that has those specific symptoms listed that workers need to look out for and report if they're experiencing. Basic sanitation policies, so how to wash their hands, restroom procedures, management of injuries, all of those things that we already covered. And any farm-specific procedures too. Where are all of these facilities? What is the discipline policy if they aren't following these food safety policies and procedures? A couple other things you might want to cover during worker training. We don't want to do things like, we don't want to harvest produce that is visibly contaminated with feces. So that's something you'll want to cover in your training. Amanda always says, and I can't say it any better, we can't see bacteria, but we can see poop. So if there is poop on the produce, we can assume that there's bacteria there, and we're not going to be able to wash all of that off no matter how hard we try. So workers should be trained to not harvest any produce that is visibly contaminated with feces. So those are some other things you can cover in that training as well. So training format, what does this need to look like? And the nice thing about this is there's a lot of flexibility here. What works best for your farm? So this could be just something that you do verbally with your workers. You guys sit down and you have a discussion and you go through all of these policies. You might also have written policies. You might have all this written out and you have your workers review that and sign off. That might be appropriate for your workers, but also keep in mind things like literacy challenges that some workers might experience, so that might not always be appropriate. You can utilize videos if you would like, and the great thing about videos is that you don't have to recreate the wheel here. There are some great videos out there, and I'll show you where to find those on our website. That are just on YouTube. Cornell Produce Safety Alliance, which is affiliated with Cornell, they put together a great worker training food safety video that is available in English, Spanish, Creole, and Hmong, I believe. So a lot of our growers that we work with will show that video. It's about 20 minutes long to their workers, and that'll be the foundation of that food safety training. And then they'll just document that they watched that video. So I will be sure to show that to you all. All right, next slide. So monitoring, what do we need to monitor when it comes to worker health, hygiene, and training? So we need to make sure that our workers are following food safety practices and farm policies every day. That's something that a manager or a supervisor can do on the farm. Want to make sure that facilities are available, clean, and well stocked every day. So that can be as easy as having like a log on the back of a door. Think like gas station bathroom. And you just once a day make sure that everything is in tip-top shape in those restroom facilities. Yeah, so supervisors can observe employee behavior, monitoring logs, we talked about all that. Corrective actions might be necessary if we find that our workers are not following food safety policies. So we can either use the carrot or the stick here. So we can reward good behavior or reprimand bad behavior. And that's kind of up to the grower. Of what approach you want to take. I think a lot of farms kind of use a combination of the two, but we want to make sure that we're building that food safety culture so it just kind of becomes second nature for our workers to follow these food safety practices. Might need corrective actions if facilities aren't cleaned, restocked, or broken. If you are a grower that has a portable toilet on your property, what are you going to do if or when that sucker just tips over in a storm? We've been having some storms the last few days. I know Southern Indiana's gotten hit kind of hard. So if you do have a toilet out there that blows over, what are you going to do? So that's where you can have that sanitation company on speed dial, have that good relationship with them so they can come help you out with that. If you have a situation like that where a facility does break or tip, you want to also decide what needs to happen to the produce. Was produce affected? Do we need to not sell some of that, not harvest some of that? Do we need to redirect worker traffic or anything like that? And record keeping is important, especially when it comes to worker training. Kind of a cliche, but we always say if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. So we want to make sure that the time that you guys are taking to train your workers is documented. So we want to document what topics you covered during that training, who conducted the training, the date, the name of the employee, and then have them sign off. So we do have some templates available online. I'll show you guys where to find those, and you can download those and use that as your record. All right, so now we're at the summary here. So just a reminder, worker health and hygiene is critical to food safety because workers can introduce food safety risks. Training is super important for anyone who handles fresh produce. And we want to make sure that we're documenting everything. All right.
So-
And then I think we have one more slide, Amanda. Yeah, so this is just kind of a nice segue before I show the website here. So like Amanda mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, Safe Produce Indiana so there's three of us, Amanda, I, and Scott, who is shown in this picture here. He's actually out busy in the fields today working with some growers and some things. So we do offer some different resources that are available if you haven't worked with us before. We offer produce safety trainings. The Produce Safety Alliance grower training, I recognize a lot of you guys from that have taken that with us before. We were working with Christina Ferroli in the Indiana Farmers Market of Community of Practice. Sorry, that's a mouthful. The last couple of years to deliver this training at no cost to growers. And we'll continue to deliver this training. But this is an 8-hour training where we cover a lot of the different food safety considerations for growers, including worker training, but we dive in a lot more to things like soil amendments, water quality, post-harvest handling, some different things like that. If you think you don't need that full 8-hour training, we do offer 2-hour produce safety basics training. That's one we more do upon request. So if you have a group of 5 or more growers that you think need to just kind of dip their toe into food safety, not completely dive in all the way, that's something where we talk about just the major risks for contamination and some different considerations for growers. So if that's something you think you need, you can reach out to us there. We also have done some trainings and things on water quality too. Our team offers farm food safety visits if that's something that you need for your farm, and we can offer feedback on your food safety practices. We've helped growers with third-party audit preparation and kind of going along with that food safety plan writing assistance too. So if in the future, if any of you need a harmonized gap audit or a Primus audit or something like that that is requested by a buyer, and they say they will only buy from you if you have this audit and you need that, reach out to us and we can help you prep for that too. And then the resources on our website that are available as well.
So Terry, we had a question in the chat about to show the sink again.
Yep,
So I'm just gonna go back to this.
yep,
So this is the one that will be purchased that you guys will get. And so like Terry said, this has the waste, you'll need a 5-gallon bucket for the waste. And obviously soap, and paper towel, but the rest of it's all contained. So we did order several different ones, and this turned out to be the best out of all the ones we looked at as far as functionality. I will say on the time to build, so this took Scott 2 hours to build this. And if you're handy, it may take you 2 hours to do it. I think I probably would still be working on this thing if I started it yesterday or 2 days ago. So it depends on your skill level. So Scott had all the tools to do this. It was easy for him to do. Me, not so much. My assortment of power tools is very limited. So, but anyway, I will stop sharing then so Terry can show the website.
yep. And I think I saw a question in the chat about links to the posters and all of that. So I'll show you my screen first and kind of where to find these things, and then I can post the links, but it all is housed through the Safe Produce Indiana website. So if you end up there, then you'll probably find the right thing. So I posted a link in the chat a little bit ago to our website. So that's safeproducein.com. So hopefully that's fairly easy to remember. And that will take you to our homepage here where we house a lot of our resources. So the first one that I will show you is where to find, I'll show you the posters first. We'll do that. So if you go over here to tools and videos, and then go to GAP posters, so GAP is Good Agricultural Practices. If you click on that, this is where you can find the PDF versions of those posters. So we have English and Spanish for when must hands be washed, and then worker illness, as well as you pick visitor do's and don'ts that you are welcome to download, print, display on your farm. If you really don't like the look of these, I know they're kind of colorful and in your face, then you feel free to use this as a template and you can create your own thing if that is something that you would like to do. There's no regulatory requirement or anything like that to post posters on the farm. I just think it's a nice reminder, kind of ingrains that into the employees or the workers' brains there. So that's where this is. Then if you go back to tools and videos and go to food safety videos here, this is where you can find the links to those worker training videos that I talked about. We have some other videos here too that we've developed over the years, but I think these are the most useful for growers on a year-to-year basis. So English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, and Hmong, those are the languages. You can open this and then it will just automatically start playing it, and there you go. And they just redid these videos a couple years ago. I think they did a really nice job with it, and they look nice and modern. The ones that they had before were a little bit early 2000s vibe, but now I think they did a really nice job. And those will review hand washing, worker illness, and a lot of these other things we've talked about. Okay, so that's where you can find the video links. If you go over here to resources, this is where you can find a ton of resources. It can be a little bit overwhelming. We tried to break it down by area, kind of what you're looking for. I relinked a couple of the videos here for people. So feel free to peruse these. But one that I do want to point out that we talked about today was right under here for record keeping. If you click this template records in Word format, if you click on that download there, it will automatically download some record keeping templates to your computer in Microsoft Word. So mine's opening a little bit slow here. So there are going to be tons of records here. If you took the Produce Safety Alliance grower training with us, these other records will have more context to them. If you haven't taken that and don't want to, and you just need that worker training record, you can find that here on page 2. So you can see that here. And what's nice about these is you can tailor this to your farm. So if you want to put your farm letterhead at the top or change this up a little bit, you're more than welcome to do that. I just wouldn't take too many of these key elements off just to make sure you have everything you need. But this is where you list the topics, employee name, signature, who the trainer was, all of that. So that is that resource. Was there anything else that we mentioned that we need to show? I think that's most of it. Like I said, we have lots and lots of resources here that you might find useful. And I encourage you to check those out. We'll put our contact info in the chat too. But if in case you lose our contact info, you can also go up here to contact us. And this is just a form you can fill out with any questions that you have. Those are sent to me automatically, and then we can chase down answers for you and help you out. Or if there's something specific that you need, we can help you. All right, I will stop sharing here.
Yeah, are there any questions that we could help try to answer or anything else you'd like us to go over a little bit more?
I'll also put links to the posters page and the tools and videos page in here too, but it's all on that same website. Oh, sorry.
And anybody who's joined at certain points, I try to keep reminding people I need your name and address in the chat so that we can send you a hand washing station. It'll be shipped directly to your address. So please, please, please make sure you drop that into the, and those who are on Zoom or phone, you need to identify, or I cannot, it just really won't work. I do need a name and address. So really appreciate everyone showing up today.
So there's a question in the chat. So when you use it keeps moving. When you use a portable station, do you treat the water in it with a bit of bleach? It wouldn't hurt. And so you need to make sure I would keep it on I would get some chlorine test strips if that's what you plan on doing, and keep it under 4 parts per million. That's the legal limit for drinking water, which I think would be fine in that system. I mean, if you're using municipal water, city water, then I would say no, that would already have it in there. So you wouldn't need to do that. But if you are using well water, it might just keep, especially if this thing is sitting out in the sun, just might keep things from growing in there. But yeah, Kathy, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Questions about links, I think, so links to the poster, those are in there, Terry?
Yep, I put that in there.
There's another question too, like at the farmers market, how close they need to be to the prepping area. I think you don't want it to like too far, but I think the OSHA state that, yeah, like that's on the farm. But if you are at the farm market, I would just recommend to not have it too far, but somewhere accessible, easily accessible for you to wash your hand, and not too close to the prepping area, because you also don't want the bacteria, like the dirty water, to get on your stuff too. So.
And so Laura, are you saying, are you setting up as a temporary retail food establishment? Is that the question, or, I mean, because yeah, I would say as Dorian said, if, just make sure it's accessible to there, and if it's, I don't know, Terry, if, or even Christina,
Yeah.
what's the requirement if you're a temporary retail food establishment? I
Oh,
think
they
you,
need a hand washing station at
Yeah.
their
just at the
tent.
yeah,
But I do know some health departments want access to restrooms and hand washing stations. So you can set up a station for just your vendors or your employees, especially if they have to walk or go a distance to access the hand washing, like the restroom. So I do know they want, I was just working with the Marion County Health Department. They were specific. They want to know where the restrooms and hand washing stations are. So again, if you feel like yours is not accessible, then the market can have one set up where the vendors can get to it easily. Does that help for market managers?
Yeah, and I just building off of what Christina said, I think it's always good to ask your health department too, because it does, all this stuff varies from county to county.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was a little shocked that obviously they want to make sure that for the vendors and for your customers that you have access to facilities and hand washing. So it's important to kind of plan those logistics out.
and so Lori, your question, did you mention that you have to have one at your tent? It's a good idea, unless, like Christina said, there's a communal area that's very easily accessed by some of, a majority of the vendors, then that's okay. But again, like Terry said, I would ask your county health department person, because they're the regulatory oversight of those.
Yeah, and if you are food retail or actually cooking food or putting food together at your tent, you do absolutely have to have a hand washing station. That is mandatory. And you can't use somebody else's. You need to have one at your station.
Yeah, same question. Do you have to have a wash station for a mobile market? A hand washing station?
Oh, you mean like a mobile produce market?
Say.
No, as long as you're not offering food samples or doing food, like preparing food. If you're just selling produce at a mobile market, you're fine. You would not need a hand washing station. But if you want to do samples, then you would need one. Or if you're preparing food, but then that would be a food truck, right? Right. I mean, if you're doing food, you would end up being classified a food truck, and they do require hand washing or running water, whatever, on the truck. Great questions. Any other questions? Oh, there's 3 more.
How far away from the produce fields should the dirty water be dumped? We don't care as long as it doesn't go back in the field. So use that, because right, if you have this water that maybe you've got the bacteria off your hands, or you're washing produce and you've got the bacteria off the produce, the last thing we want to do is put it back into the production fields. So we tell people, water your grass, water your flowers, wash your car, whatever you want, just make sure it doesn't go back into the field. Good question.
There's another question, if serve safe is needed, and to answer that question, if you're specifically only selling whole uncut produce, that is uncooked, then no, you do not need serve safe or serve safe food handler or anything like that.
Correct. It's recommended you take one of our 8-hour, the Produce Safety Alliance training, or a 2-hour training, but that's not a requirement. Well, I don't even want to get into it. If you're covered by the produce safety rule, we can get into that. But if you're just selling at local farmers markets, no, it's not recommended. What about using gloves? There's nothing saying you have to use gloves. That could be your farm policy. But again, gloves are not going to replace hand washing. So you still want to wash your hands before you use those gloves. And then if you're using gloves, you need to have on how often are you changing them? And sometimes I feel there's a false sense of security when people use gloves, because they'll put on these gloves and then you see them touching their hair and they're touching their clothes or touching some other surfaces, and they're like, well, I'm protected. Yeah, you're protected, but you've transferred bacteria. That surface of the glove is now just like your hand, right? So just make sure you have, if you're using gloves, you have that policy, but having a hand washing system in place, that's perfectly fine. No gloves are needed.
So Lola asked, Reverend Bartlett asked, how often should you change the gloves, which is a really good question. For retail food service, it's every 4 hours of constant use.
Or if you change activities.
Or yeah, exactly.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend
Are there
Bartlett, for that.
suggestions for foot washing stations? So you can buy, they call them foot baths, and you can buy them on Amazon. They're maybe $50 to $80. And then I would recommend putting some sort of sanitizer. So again, you know, that is labeled for that use. And you can, we have our, well, that's what for fruit and vegetable washing. If you're looking for a sanitizer, just send me an email and we can talk about what you want to use it for. And I can, you know, we don't recommend any specific products as Purdue, but we can talk, I can give you suggestions that would do what you are looking to do it for. So they're not super expensive. And I mean, and especially if you have a, you know, a diversified farm where you're walking through different places, maybe those foot baths would be a really good idea for your farm.
And we have seen growers too that might not want to do foot baths, and they'll have designated footwear for certain areas too. And that's another option if you don't want to go the foot bath route, especially if you have a diversified farm and you're going through livestock areas and things like that.
Yep.
We did have someone point out about money, so that this would be if they're at a farmer's market or mobile market and doing direct to consumer customer sales. Yeah, money is dirty. I mean, you'd want to cut down as much as possible handling of produce if you're also handling money. And technically, credit cards are just as dirty as money because they well, maybe less because you only touch your credit card. But again, you'd want to come up with procedures where you would handle the credit card, one person doing credit cards and a second person handling the produce if possible. But I know that's a lot, having enough staff on site to do sales sometimes just doesn't work all that well. But yeah, money is dirty. You're correct.
For sure.
All right, we're coming up. We've got just a few more minutes left. We could take a few more calls or questions.
Yeah, and we have, you have our email address. I put my phone number in the chat. And like Terry said, you can always go to the website and put a question in there. We keep up on that stuff. So, if something comes up and you need a resource, and you know, even if it is as easy, I mean, it's easy for us to come out on your farm if you just are curious where you are and you know, maybe what things you could work on. We're happy to do that too. And so all this is provided through Purdue Extension. So it's free of charge.
Yep, and I just put our website in there one more time, just in case you lost the chat or anything like that, or there's been a lot going on in the chat. So I put that in there one more time.
Thank you, Terry. Well, we're coming up to 1 o'clock. Oh, go ahead.
One last question. How do you get you to come to our farm? Send me an email. Simple as that. We'll arrange a time. Be one of the three of us. Sometimes it's all three of us, just depends on our schedule. But yeah, just shoot me an email or give me a call. Yeah, we'll get something going. It's better if you're rocking and rolling and we can really see what's going on, but we've done it, you know, in the spring and the fall when you have more time. But when we can really see stuff in action, it's better for us, so we get the true picture, but it doesn't have to be.
There's one more question. How should we approach garden gloves? Are they okay? I'll let you guys handle that one.
How do
garden gloves? How do you approach garden gloves? The use of garden gloves, and are they okay?
Yeah, so if they're not disposable gloves, then yeah, you want them on some sort of wash cycle. Nobody's gonna tell you what that wash cycle is, but you know, if they're dirty, you know, have a set that's in the wash, have a set that you're using and rotate them. All right.
All right. right, everyone. Well, thank you all for participating. If you dropped your name and address in the chat, we have 43 hand washing stations to send out. So I think we should be able to cover everyone. Again, if you're a phone number or a Zoom user, I don't know who you are. So if you dropped your name and address in the chat, and we'll accommodate everyone as much as possible. Again, the first 43 will get a hand washing station. So thank you to Dr. Amanda Deering, Terry, and Dorianne. I appreciate your time and talent, and have a good rest of the afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Thank you.